I'm going to address what Yaakov Meir brought up in last week's shiur. And if Yaakov Meir wants to hear it, you can refer him to the video.
The video, yeah.
Fine. We were talking about how every Jew, by virtue of his neshama, is a holy person. He just has to access it. He just has to be able to reveal who he truly is. And that's the job of Moshe Rabbeinu, to nurture the faith and reveal the faith that every Jew has inside. And Yaakov Meir mentioned a number of Jews that he knows from Italy that he felt were not part of that definition because of their behavior, because of their action. So we have to distinguish between a person's pnimius and his chitzonius, between who he is inside and who he is in his consciousness, okay? Because we're not always conscious of who we really are. That's the lifelong work of a person, to become in touch with who he really is and to allow that goodness that's inside him to shine. Some people don't do the work. Some people, for whatever the reasons, their upbringing, their environment, their education, their society in which they live, their place in society, what they're used to, their habits, they're busy with nonsense. They're busy with other things that are giving them pleasure, and they can go through their whole life of, just trying to satisfy their pleasures until they die. I knew a man, a very nice man, that this is a true story. He looked forward very, very much to his retirement. He worked very, very hard. And he talked all the time about when he retires, he's going to, whatever he's going to do the things he likes to do. And then he retired. And within a few months, he got a very debilitating stroke. And he wasn't able to do the things that he wanted to do. And it was very upsetting to him. The stroke was enough to prevent him from doing those things, but not enough to prevent him from realizing that he couldn't do those things. And it upset him. And we should all learn for that. We shouldn't wait. We should, every day, every moment, we should make it important. We should make it meaningful. Our lives are made up of moments, just an accumulation of one moment after the other. And what we do at that moment, we can bring joy, and we can bring knowledge and faith and goodness and godliness and kedusha into every moment of our lives. The Rebbe was very, very much against wasting time. Very much. It disturbed him very, very much, because the preciousness of each person's life is his moments, is his time. There's nothing more precious than a person's time. So we should use our time for good things. But anyway, so even though that may be where a person is holding externally, it doesn't mean that that's who he really is. It's just that he's, there's a concept called a tinoik shenishba. You've heard that concept? A child that's been kidnapped. The Rambam talks about, the Gemara talks about Jewish people that were raised without a Torah education are in the category of like a child that was kidnapped. He was raised in a way that wasn't aligned with Jewish values, with Jewish learning, with Torah and mitzvahs. So that person is not obligated like another person, like a person who knows what he needs to do and then chooses not to do it, right? If someone never learned about Shabbos, right? So you can't expect them to keep Shabbos because they never learned about it. But if someone learned about Shabbos and he knows the importance of Shabbos, he decides to transgress the Shabbos, chas v'shalom. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to say, it's going to have din v'cheshbon. It's going to have a din v'cheshbon. Translation, anybody? Judgment and accounting. It's going to have to make a reckoning and accounting before Hashem. At the end of the day, we're all going to go up after 120, 180. Some say 180. Some say we're going to live forever because Mashiach is going to come, and then we're not going to have to die. And even though it says that at the revival of the dead, right? How can there be the revival of the dead if someone never died? So that can be fulfilled by what we say after Shemona Esrei, v'nafshi ka'ofer l'kol tiyeh, that our soul will be like dust to everyone. In other words, through the bittul, through the nullification we have of our egos, will become like dust, and that will fulfill the death in a non-physical manner. Or there's another opinion that says we'll have to die, but it'll just be instantaneous, and then the Kodesh Baruch Hu will bring us back to life in order to fulfill the Tchias HaMesim, that the revival of the dead. There has to be some type of a death to be the revival of the dead. Yeah? A little off the subject. Yeah. So everyone has to make a reckoning before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But people that were never exposed to Torah and mitzvahs, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't judge them the same way, because they're not at fault. And he expects us to reach out to them and to try to explain to them what their mission is, why they were created, why they were put in this world. We weren't put in this world just to have one physical pleasure after the next. That's a purposeless life that may be enjoyable for the moment, but there's not really any meaning in it. And for certain, I mentioned many times the story that Rabbi Yechezkel Sofer, was one of the Rebbe Shluchim, said when he was approached by a kibbutznik. He went to a kibbutz that wasn't an observant kibbutz. It was an extremely secular kibbutz, and he kept going there and giving classes and trying to reach out to the Jews over there to bring them closer to Yiddishkeit. And one of the kibbutznikim said, "You're wasting your time. What are you doing here? You're wasting your time. Go somewhere where you'll have more success." And Rabbi Sofer said to him, he said, "If you know that there's oil in a certain place, so even if you dig 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters, and you don't find it, you're not going to stop. If you don't know and you're just exploring, you'll stop because it costs a lot of money to dig, right? It takes time. And you could look for a better spot. But if you know that there's oil there, you're not going to stop until you find it." That's what he told the kibbutznik. So every Jew, and this is what I wanted to tell Yaakov Meir, and he can listen to the video. Every Jew has that Pintel Yid, that neshama, that spark of godliness that's just waiting to be kindled. And I don't know how much exposure all of you have to other streams within Yiddishkeit, but not every stream within Yiddishkeit takes the approach of every person is obligated to try to help another and try to bring him close. Not every stream has that approach. I remember one time when I was first learning about Yiddishkeit, I went for Shabbos and I said, we have to reach out. I got involved with Yiddishkeit through Chabad. So I understood this is the shita, this is the way to do it. And the person said, "No. First you have to fill your gut," he said, "your keres, your stomach. First you have to fill your stomach with Shas and Boiskim, with Gemara, with Halacha, with really learning a lot. And only then can you teach others. And I said, but I learned if you know an aleph, teach an aleph. If you know a bet, teach a bet. So that is definitely the Chabad philosophy, and it's definitely spread through a large segment of Judaism that even streams that previously didn't have that philosophy now adopt that philosophy. But still, not everyone feels obligated to do it. But the fact that we're all here in a Beit Chabad, right, whose whole purpose is to light up the area and to light up Yidden and even non-Jews, even to bring non-Jews to us, like we read in the Haftorah, that Hashem says about the non-Jews that will come close to Him through the Jewish people. That's how the non-Jews come close to Him, through us. So He'll call them my people. It says in the Haftarah, and then right afterwards it says, "But I'll keep my Shekhinah by you." There's still going to be a difference between Am Yisrael and the rest of the world, but we're considered a Mamleches Koyanim. That's what the Torah calls us, a nation of priests and a holy nation. What's the job of a priest? Just to serve in the Beis Hamikdash? No. The job of the priest is because he's freed up from working. And he lives off the trumot, the tithes, and the tzedakah of the Jewish people that they have to tithe from their agriculture, right? And also he gets to eat from the holy sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash and also give to his family. He's freed up to learn Torah, but not just that he should fill his gut and become a holy person for himself. No, he's supposed to be a Kohen. He's supposed to be a lamplighter. That's what when the Frierdiker Rebbe was the Rebbe Rechavia, the Frierdiker Rebbe, who coined that term, that Hasidim are lamplighters, and we're all Hasidim. Doesn't matter if you wear a black yarmulke or a knit yarmulke, or you wear a gartel, or you don't wear a gartel, or you wear a jacket, or you don't wear a jacket. It doesn't matter. If you got the kernel, if it's sunk in, and they say in Israel, Haim Asimon Nafal. You ever heard that expression? Did the Asimon fall? You heard that? No?
Yeah.
You heard that. You've been here a while. You know what an Asimon is? Remember Asimonim?
There's the coin, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a self-similar coin.
Yeah, it was a coin with a notch and a hole in it, and that's where the old, before cell phones, there were telephone booths.
That's right.
And you had to put in these asimonim, and they would fall every few seconds. They would fall. So the expression came if a concept would become grasped, it like, oh, the asimon fell, because a person could hear something and hear something and hear something, but it doesn't become internalized. It remains, he knows about it, but it doesn't become part of his life until the asimon falls. So Bezrat Hashem, I'm sure by all of us, the asimon is fallen, and we understand that we have to be lamplighters. We know much more than an olive. And there's oil. It requires bittul. It requires self-sacrifice. Shalom Aleichem. It requires self-sacrifice, though. I remember one time I was on an El Al plane. An El Al plane is a great opportunity to go around and put tefillin on. But it requires bittul, because it's I don't know, for some people it's not uncomfortable. For some people it's not uncomfortable. But for me, I can't explain why. It's uncomfortable if a guy's sitting and whatever he's doing, he's in his own space, and I'm coming over to him like, who invited you? No one likes to get unsolicited advice. Usually, you're supposed to love tochach. That's what it says. That a person who's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves tochach because it stands him. He loves rebuke because it stands him in the right place. If he doesn't get the rebuke, he's not going to correct his fault. So the fact that someone gives him a rebuke and it's correcting him, he's happy about that. So in a similar manner, it's not a rebuke to ask someone and say, Yehudi Akar, precious Yid, Would you like to put on tefillin? It's not a rebuke. You're giving a person an opportunity to put on tefillin. But nevertheless, you're invading his private space without asking. He didn't invite you in. You're going and knocking on his door, right? And not everyone says yes, right? And so if you get rejected, it's not comfortable. Whatever. I'm sure many of you could give a lot of other reasons why a person could feel uncomfortable, things like that, and all other. Anyway, I felt uncomfortable. But I'm sitting on the plane, and it's a 10-hour flight or a 12-hour flight, and it's light. It's the time to put on tefillin, and I have tefillin. And the Rebbe says there's a mitzvah of tefillin. The Rebbe gave a lot of mitzvahim, things like missions that each and every Jew should fulfill. Each and every Jew. You don't have to be a chassid with a beard or a gartel and a jacket. You're connected to the Rebbe. You're connected to the Rebbe. There's a concept where it says, tafasta, if you grasp a tiny amount of the essence of a thing, you grasp the whole thing. So if you're connected, you're connected. It's not going to help to say, oh, well, I'm not.
I got a question.
Sure.
What about if you were in a different airline, would you be comfortable?
Well, if it was coming to Israel or leaving from Israel, it would probably be more uncomfortable. But still, there's Jews there. So, the mitzvah still applies. The Chabad, the shluchim of Chabad, the emissaries of Chabad, they don't just go to Yerushalayim and the nice Jewish cities. They go also to Poland and Ukraine and Africa, all over the place. So it doesn't have to, but I was on El Al and I felt uncomfortable. I'm sure it would have been even more uncomfortable on another airline. So I had this battle in myself, and time is going by. And I said to myself, what am I arguing? What am I going back and forth? What does it have to do with me? This has nothing to do with me. I'm not the one who said that this is what should be done. There's a Rebbe. There's a Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the one who said it. And if I'm doing it because he said it. So it has nothing to do with me. And the success has nothing to do with me. I just have to do what the Rebbe said. If I'm connected to the Rebbe, I have to do what the Rebbe said. And with that, I got up and I went around, and Baruch Hashem, it was very successful. It's very successful. The next time, it was a little less successful. But that was the mindset I had. It has nothing to do with me. In this case, I have to be just a funnel. I just have to be a funnel.
Once you started, did anyone stay over here?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
I'd rather if you come by than people on Ryanair. They never stop coming by asking for this, that, the other thing.
Oh, yeah?
You.
They ask for donations.
Oh, they're selling this.
The staff of the air? Okay.
I'd rather see you.
So, it's all true, right? We all have to be lamplighters. If you know an Aleph, teach an Aleph. And it has to be done with a smile and with genuine care for the other person. I remember one time I was doing Mitzvah Lulav in a park, and these two beautiful children were so excited to shake the lulav. It was the first time they shook the lulav in their lives. And right after they finished, their mother came up and she started screaming at me. And she said, all you're interested in is in your own olam haba. You're doing all this for your own world to come. That's why you're doing this. Like that was the furthest thing from another Jew, from my mind. When a person's helping another Jew, he cares about the other Jew. He's not doing it for himself. He's doing it because he has a genuine care for another Jew. And words that enter the heart, words that come from the heart, enter the heart. Okay? So all that being said, it's all true. Okay? That's the pnimius. That's the internal aspect of each and every Jew. And we have an obligation, each and every one of us, to, as much as we can, influence another Jew. Of course we have to influence ourselves. But we know an Aleph, teach an Aleph. Whatever you know, teach with genuine care. And Bezrat Hashem will see great success in those things. On the other hand, what Yaakov Meir brought up, that sometimes you see Jews that are, not only are they not, do they appear by their external thought, speech, and deed. You don't know their thoughts, but speech and deed, to be very, very far away. Not only that, sometimes they actually act in a way that can be negative to the Jewish people. And in such a case, so first of all, you've all heard of the Chofetz Chaim, correct? So the Chofetz Chaim wrote a halacha book called the Mishnah Brura, which is learned by communities all across the world. And in the first halacha, where it says you have to be az kenamer, you have to be bold as a leopard. That's the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch, to make us enthusiastic when you wake up in the morning and you say Modahani. You have to be swift as an eagle, strong as a lion, bold as a leopard, to do the ratzon, the will of your maker. So it says az kenamer. Az means bold. But az is also can be very, very easily distorted and used for arrogance. Like it says that a lot of times it uses the word azus panim, if you ever heard that expression, that a person he has a arrogant disposition. It's a very negative, huh? Chutz, yeah, chutz. So here it uses the same word to serve Hashem. So the Chofetz Chaim, he makes the following distinction in the Mishnah Brura. He says, when it comes to your own personal things, so you have to have selflessness and humbleness, and not get upset and excited about whatever people are saying or doing. What do you care? You know who you are. You know you're part of the holy nation. You always have to act that way. But when it comes to something in the community and someone who's doing something that can do a takala, that can make a damage, then that's when you have to be bold as a leopard and to rise up and to stop what that person is trying to do to damage the community. So it's all true. Every Jew has a holy neshama, and we have to try to reveal that. But if at the current situation the person is damaging, is making damages, you have to try to stop the person. Just like if you would be on a very narrow street, and a car would be racing at you, and you have nowhere to go, and there's a Jewish person in the car, and you have a gun, and the guy's drunk. So he's drunk. He's not really at fault, right? I mean, he shouldn't have gotten the car and drove. But now that he's driving, he doesn't really know what he's doing because his mind is all confused because of the alcohol. Nevertheless, you're going to save your life if you can't run out of the way. You're going to stop him, even if you have to shoot him, right? If you can shoot the tires, shoot the tires. But if the only way to stop him from running into you is to shoot him, you're going to shoot him, right? It's self-defense, right? Anyone disagree? No. So it's not a contradiction, and that's what I wanted to bring out. It's not a contradiction. Oh, and I will tell you.
What is not a contradiction again?
In the previous class, one of the students was saying, we were talking about in the Maamar, how every Jew is part of the holy nation. Every Jew has an neshama that's a part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and therefore he's holy. Yeah. So he pointed out there are Jews that you see they're not holy.
Yeah.
So it's not a contradiction that their speech and their actions do not reflect who they truly are.
Right.
It could be because of the improper education they got, or whatever. So it's our job to try to reveal who they really are. But on the other hand, that's not a contradiction to if someone is trying to make a damage in the community or amongst the Jewish people to try to stop them or to speak out against them or whatever a person can do. Yeah. So there was a guy, and we know that the previous Rebbe suffered terribly in communist Russia. He led the revolt against the communists. The communists tried to eradicate religion completely. The Greek Orthodox Church shut its doors for 70 years. They didn't put up a fight. I'm talking about over 100 million Russians. But a million, I don't know how many Jews over there under the leadership of the Rebbe Rayatz, he made a pact with his Hasidim and he said, we are going to fight these decrees to try to eradicate Yiddishkeit, even if it means giving up our life. And many Hasidim literally gave up their lives for saving Yiddishkeit, for keeping the fire going. And the Rebbe Rayatz, the communists, they created even a special section within the Communist Party called the Yivseksia, the Yid Seksia, the Jewish section. And it was run by two guys, a guy named Lulav and a guy named Mendelssohn. Lulav. That was his last name.
Okay.
And a guy named Mendelssohn. Yeah. And they had from roots, Hasidic roots, but they were young and they were influenced by the communists and they became communists and they were self-haters. They were self-haters. And that's a malady that is a very, very sad state. When you find a Jew who is so disconnected with his true self that he hates that part of himself. You can take a look in Rashi in Parshas Bechukosai. Take a look at Rashi in the beginning of Parshas Bechukosai. Rashi goes through the 7 levels of a person's psychological understanding of himself until he gets to actually hating Yiddishkeit. It starts with being lax in learning Torah, and then it just goes from there. Take a look. I suggest you all take a look at that Rashi in Bechukosai. Very, very interesting. So this guy Lulav actually it was either Lulav or Mendelssohn, but they were actually involved. They were actually responsible for the murder of spilling of Jewish blood, and I mean they were serious. They were serious communists, and they tried to stamp out Yiddishkeit. I think it was Lulav. It could have been Mendelssohn that when they were interrogating the Rebbe Rayatz, and they were asking him to give over information about his underground network of yeshivas and mikvahs and sheikhtim, and he wouldn't tell them, and they were beating him, and he still wouldn't tell them. And he refused to speak to them in Russian, he only spoke to them in Yiddish. One of these two, pulled out a gun, he held it to the Rebbe's hand, and he said, "This little toy, many people speak." And the Rebbe Rayatz looked at him and he said, "Your little toy can frighten only those with one world and many gods. But it will not frighten those with one God and 2 worlds." And after the war, it was reported by one of the Hasidim to the Rebbe Rayatz that Lulav had died. And the Chassid that told the Rebbe Rayatz that Lulav had died, when he said Lulav, he said Yimach Shmo, which is a term which means may his name be erased. We use that term for Hitler, for Arafat, for the enemies of Israel. And Lulav was definitely an enemy of Israel. He was in his actions, he was an enemy of Israel. No question about it. But the Rebbe Rayatz corrected him. And he said, about a Jew, you never say Yamach Shemo. You never say, may his name be erased.
Even a murderer?
Yeah. Even this guy, yeah.
Wow.
And the Rebbe Rayatz then said, if Lulav would have a brother, would have been, I don't know if Lulav was married or not, but if Lulav, in theory, was married, and then he died and his wife was childless, would Lulav's brother have the mitzvah of Yibum? You know, Yibum is a mitzvah dictated by the Torah. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs, that in the case where a man dies, a married man dies, and he has no children, the man's brother has an obligation to marry the man's wife in order to, it says, Lahakim Zera Me'achiv, to bring seed from his brother. The child that will be born to that relationship will be considered the seed of the one who passed away. And if the brother doesn't want to do it, and also if the woman doesn't want to do it, there's an alternative called chalitza, where he has to she spits in his shoe. There's a whole, you can look in the Torah and see what it says. I had a great aunt, but on my aunt's side, who wasn't related to me, her mother, I knew that I didn't know. When I was a child, it was already after the fact, but I had heard that she had done chalitza. Someone had heard that there was a situation like that, and we even do it today. Today we don't do yibum. We only do chalitza. And so the previous Rebbe said to this chassid that said about Lulav Yamach Shemo, the previous Rebbe said, if Lulav would have had a wife, would his brother have to do yibum? And then he answered his own question, of course. Of course he would have to do yibum. The fact that Lulav was a rasha and Lulav was a murderer doesn't take away from the fact that there's a Jewish soul in there. It's a tragedy. It's something we should cry about. And if Lulav is out and his hand is raised to try and harm, we should stop him. Right? That was what Yaakov was saying last week. For the informers, there should be no hope. Yes, but it doesn't take away from the fact that inside, deep and buried inside, in a deep exile, a double and quadrupled and even more exile is a holy spark. It's buried, but it doesn't mean it's not there. You know, this just reminds me of a story that was learned in Russia. A young Hasidic man who wanted to participate in the Farbrengen, and the Farbrengens were held in secret places, and the places were always changed, and they were only notified right in advance. And when you went there, you had to take a roundabout way and make sure you weren't being followed, because when you were going to Farbrengen, you were risking your life, and not only your life, but you were risking the life of everyone else who was participating. So this young man, all the proper precautions, and he took all kinds of roundabout routes until he arrived there, and he went down the stairs into a basement. That's where the Farbrengen was being held, in a basement with no windows. And he knocked on the door, and they opened the door, and he couldn't see. It was very dark inside. You know how it is when you come from the sunlight and you go all of a sudden into a dark room, you can't see anything. So one of the Hasidim said to him, just wait a few minutes. You'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. You'll be able to see. So the Mashpia, the one who was leading the Farbrengen, he said, that's the problem. We get used to the darkness. We get used to it. And just to close off this subject with another interesting story, which I heard on a video from Y.Y. Jacobs, and then we'll jump into the Maamar. And that is that after the Holocaust, there was a young man by the name of Simon Wiesenthal. I'm sure you've heard of Simon Wiesenthal. And he was in a displaced persons camp. He was a survivor. And one of the rabbis from America came to Europe to try to encourage Jews that had survived. His name was Rabbi Eliezer Silver. And he tried to arrange a minyan for Mincha. And they were short a man. And he asked of Simon Wiesenthal, who was a young man at the time, he said, please join us in the minyan for Mincha. We need you. You'll be the 10th man. He said, no, I refuse. I said, why do you refuse? He said, I'll tell you why I refuse. He said, when I was in the camps, we were starving. We had nothing. We had no food. And there was a Jew there that had smuggled in somehow a siddur. And he would rent out his siddur for a crust of bread. He wouldn't give his siddur to other Jews for free, only if they would give him a piece of their bread. It was life and death. And plenty of people starved and died. Plenty of people starved and died. Matter of fact, when I was first married, I rented a place from a Holocaust survivor, Henry Jarrett, alav shalom, and he told me a number of interesting stories about his experiences in the camps. And he told me about his brother, that his brother died of starvation. They were in the same camp in Auschwitz. And the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, they used to throw in bread. They used to throw in a loaf of bread for 50, 100 guys and watch. They would have pleasure watching the Jews struggle and fight to get the bread. So everyone would try to get a piece. And he would try to get a piece for his brother too. But his brother wouldn't fight. His brother was like a righteous, lofty person that he just, even though he was starving, he just wouldn't go and fight for the bread. You know, it says that the Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash, at the end of every week, the Kohanim used to make lechem apanim. They call it the showbread. Yeah. It was bread that was sat on the shulchan, which was in the kodesh near the menorah and the golden altar where the Kohanim offered the incense every morning and every afternoon. And the bread sat there all week until they would make new bread. And what did they do with the old bread? It was a mitzvah to eat the old bread. And there were a lot of Kohanim. So it's the Kohanim, they didn't have they used to grab. They used to mamish grab the bread. In the Mishnah, I think, or the Gemara, it says that the Ziknei Kohanim wouldn't grab the bread. Even though it was a mitzvah to add the bread, to eat from the bread, the elders of the Kohanim, they wouldn't grab from the bread, even though it was a mitzvah, because it wasn't the way to fulfill it. Like, to fight over the bread, push another guy out of the way. So Henry Jarrett's brother wouldn't grab the bread, and Henry Jarrett would try to get him bread, but he wasn't able to get his brother enough bread, and his brother died of starvation. Very sad. Anyhow, so Simon Wiesenthal is telling Rabbi Eliezer Silver why he's not going to come to Mincha, because from that experience of this Jew renting out his siddur for a crust of bread, the whole idea of davening became to him davar maus. It became to him something not pleasant, and he didn't want anything to do with it. So Rabbi Eliezer Silver looks at them and he says, "Nah." He calls him. He says like young man, but nar literally means young man. But we also say there's this expression narishkeit. You've heard that Yiddish expression, which means young man stuff. But we use it to say like foolishness. He goes, nar. He said, "Why are you looking at the actions of this Jew that had the siddur?" You're right. His actions were not nice. He said, why don't you look at the actions of all the Jews that gave their crust of bread in order to be able to daven? Look at their actions. Simon Wiesenthal hadn't thought of it like that. And he said, you're right. And he came and he davened. He joined the minyan for Mincha. So our perspective always has to be looking at the good and being positive, and not looking at the negative and being negative. That's the right way. That's the Hasidic way. And we should all, if we don't have that nature built into us, so we should try however we can to try to push the negativity out and let the sun shine in. You know, there's a story by that non-Jewish author, very famous in the 1920s, and you all know who I'm talking about. I just can't remember. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's the name of his book.
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie, right. So you know the story he gives over there with the sun and the wind? In that book, he gives a very nice story. He says that the sun and the wind had a bet. Who was stronger? And how were they going to figure out who was stronger? They were going to make a guy take off his jacket. So they see this guy walking around wearing a jacket, and the wind says, I'm going to go first, and the wind starts blowing, howling. And this guy takes his jacket, he pulls it closer on him, and the wind goes even stronger. The stronger the wind gets, the closer and the more tight the guy holds his jacket until the wind gives up. And then the sun says, okay, my turn. And the sun comes out, makes it all warm. And he just takes off his jacket. So that's the approach. Used to be, once upon a time, you gave somebody a slap on the wrist with a ruler, right? You remember that? Anyone remember that? In school? You didn't have that? Teacher give a slap on, today a teacher gives a slap on the wrist, you probably go to jail. Right? It just doesn't work these days. Today, everything has to be with kindness and softness, gentleness, and even the Gemara says, "Hayamin mekareves v'asmol doche." But the yamin that brings close has to be in a greater measure than the left, which pushes away. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons why the tefillin strap on the right is longer. The right is chesed, and left is gevura. And chesed has to be more than gevura. Okay.
Did they check up on this guy and his son like 30 years later to see if he had a son?
If what?
How long did he survive in the substance?
No, it's just an idea, that the warmth will have a greater effect, and you'll be more successful. Also with ourselves. We have to be compassionate with ourselves too. True. We have to also be honest with ourselves, and we have to, self-love. It says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." You should love your fellow as yourself. So if you don't love yourself, you can't really love another person. You have to first love yourself. But self-love, love blinds. In general, love blinds. But self-love blinds a person to their own faults.
About 4 songs in there. It was beautiful.
Self-love blinds a person to their own faults. So, therefore, we have to, when it comes to ourselves, they once asked the previous Rebbe, why did Hashem create a person with 2 eyes? One eye in the middle of the head. So the Rebbe said, the right eye is the eye of chesed, and the left eye is the eye of gevura. Shalom. And when it comes to chesed is kindness, and gevura is more of a strictness. When it comes to looking at the other person, your fellow, use the eye of kindness. When it comes to looking at yourself, Use the eye of Gevura. You're supposed to have compassion on yourself, but you're also supposed to make an honest reckoning of who you are. You should know your strengths, and you should know your weaknesses, and you should be honest about your weaknesses, and you should do what you can to correct them, and also to increase your strengths. So that's the end of the first part of the shiur, which is 45 minutes, which was all in your zchut. This entire shiur up till now had to do with what you brought up last week.
Happily, I can check it on YouTube.
That's correct. And we said actually in the beginning that if you come late, we'll tell you to check it on the YouTube, because we discussed when you were talking about the few Italian Jews that you knew about. And
The doctor.
You gotta go to a doctor.
it's okay. It's fine.
It's not that I missed the...
It's fine. It's fine. I wasn't coming to criticize you. I was just saying that in your zchut, this part of the shiur took place. So now let's jump into the Maamar. What? Yes.
So I cannot make any questions now.
You can make questions.
Next week.
Yeah, you could listen to and make questions next week. Yeah, I think we covered it in comprehensively. You have any questions though? Do they want to be know? How is it not a contradiction that you could see a Jewish person who appears to be a self-hater, even someone who hates a Yiddishkeit, even someone who's actively against Yiddishkeit, yet nevertheless still have the Holy Spark inside? And our obligation to try to kindle that spark, but also our obligation to try to protect the people that this person's actually trying to make damage in the community and the Jewish people. Yes. So, Rabbi Diamond passed out my Maamar. Thank you very much, Rabbi Diamond. And we're going to start today. I also took into account, in preparing this shiur, because this Maamar, the Rebbe does a lot of analysis on why the Rebbe said, why the previous Rebbe said this word, and why he said this word, this phrase before that phrase, which we're going to skip. We're just going to focus on the concepts that the Maamar is coming to teach us, and not the analysis, which is not less important, but perhaps less relevant to this particular class. Okay, so page 362.
You got another diamond?
Yeah.
Another copy?
Yeah, there's another one. Okay.
There. I can see, so I mean, over that view.
So, a Jew's willingness to sacrifice his life for Yiddishkeit, so it comes from the faith that's rooted in his soul, primarily. Because there's another faith that comes, that we said in the previous shiur, from his soul as it sees above. And there's a connection between the soul above and the soul below. And when the soul sees above, it tries to influence the soul below. And that's why from time to time, a person that even may be far away from Yiddishkeit will sometimes get hirurei tshuva. Sometimes all of a sudden, in the middle of his business or in the middle of something, he'll just feel, wow, I have to be a better Jew. And he doesn't know where that came from. That comes from his soul above is constantly trying to influence him. And I think that in the life of every Jew, our souls are always trying to give out pulses, if that's the word, pulses of awakening. And a lot of times we may ignore it, but we're supposed to pay attention to these pulses that we get from time to time. And when you get a pulse, when you get a pulse, so you have to take it, and it's a very fine thing. And for example, if you want to make a fire, your goal is that you should make a big bonfire that you can see. You know, you light it in Meron and you can see it from Tel Aviv and from Yerushalayim and from Haifa and from Beersheba. You want it to be such a big fire that it spreads out and lights up the whole world. But if you take a little fire and you throw, in order to have a big fire, you need big, thick logs. But if you take a little fire and you throw big, thick logs on it, so you'll put it out, the logs won't catch. First you have to kindle that little fire, and then you have to take little thin branches, and then when they catch on, you have to take thicker branches, and then once the fire is going real well, then you can put on the big logs. So also in our service to Hashem, sometimes it works if a person takes a giant leap, but sometimes it's better to just go one step at a time. Because when you go one step at a time, you know where you're going. But if you take a giant leap, sometimes you could fall backwards. But I've seen that Israelis will take giant leaps. Like Israelis will come to the conclusion, yes, Kodesh Baruch Hu exists. Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the Torah to Am Yisrael at Har Sinai. Yes, I'm part of Am Yisrael. Therefore, I have to keep everything it says in the Torah. And they will. And they'll just, boom. They'll start doing that. It all depends. I don't know. There's plenty of Israelis that have made that move. And from one day to the next, boom, they change their lives. And from then on, they move forward. I don't know that it's, each person has to know in their soul what's best for them. It could be that in certain areas, a person has to take a giant leap. For example, if a person is steeped in sin, Khalila, right? So they have to take a giant leap, which means say no more, right? That may be a giant leap. Or if a person finds out they're diabetic, Khalila, they have to immediately get rid of their sugar. They can't have cake anymore. They may be used to having cake every day, but now it's dangerous for their life, so they can't have it anymore. Same thing in the spiritual realm. If something is bad and someone comes to the conclusion that it's bad, so there it's appropriate to take a giant leap and just say, get rid of it, right? Not to say, well, I'm going to gradually reduce the sin. Whatever works, but if someone would ask me, that would be the advice I would give them. But when it comes to climbing the ladder and, if a person is learning one shiur a week, and they realize that it's very important to study Torah all the time, and they make up in their mind, I'm going to study Torah 5 hours a day from now on, that may be it may be a great idea, but actually fulfilling it and committing to it, like it's better to say, I'll take on another shiur, or I'll learn an extra 15 minutes, and then stick with that and then go another 15 minutes. The Rebbe always encouraged people to do more. So we should all do more, Bezrat Hashem. So this faith that is the impetus for a Jew's willingness to give up his life for his Yiddishkeit, it comes primarily from who he really is, from his essence, than it comes from what his soul sees above. Even though the impression created by sight is very, very powerful, nevertheless, it's not necessarily going to be internalized with the person and connected to who he is. And it's not necessarily going to necessitate Mesiras Nefesh. What will necessitate Mesiras Nefesh? The fact that his faith in God is a part of his very soul. Like we say, we are Ma'aminim b'nei Ma'aminim. And therefore, since he's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all of a sudden he realizes that this act of idol worship or giving up his religion will separate him and surrender and surrender him from God. Surrender. Separation is a word like that. Surrender. Remove his connection, separate his connection from Hashem. He won't do it, even if it means his life will be forfeit. And this And this is what it means that Moshe's function as a shepherd of faith, that Moshe, and it applies not just to Moshe Rabbeinu, but to all the extensions of Moshe in every generation, that they inspire the Jewish people to manifest self-sacrifice for the sake of the observance in Torah and mitzvahs. Yeah. So now let's jump to 367. So based on this, it can be explained that the shepherds of Israel, Mordechai, in the generation of the Purim miracle, expressed the qualities of a shepherd of faith even to a greater extent than Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Because there was no situation in the 40 years in the desert where the Jewish people were required to give it their life for Yiddishkeit. It was just, they were in a situation of life, a situation of eating manna and being surrounded by the clouds of glory. And Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching them Torah until they became what we call the Dor Deah, a generation of knowledge. Their faith was great, and their knowledge was great, but still they didn't have the actual nisayon, they didn't have the actual test like the Jewish people had in the times of Purim. And the fact that Mordechai was able to inspire the Jewish people in the times of Purim to actually maintain their Yiddishkeit, even in the face of their life being exterminated. So that expressed the qualities of a Raya Mehemna, of a shepherd of faith, to a greater extent than Moshe Rabbeinu himself. For the expression and revelation of this dimension of faith, which comes from the essence of a Jewish soul, primarily manifest in actual self-sacrifice, which we said. And it's well known. The ultimate prototype of actual self-sacrifice for Torah and mitzvahs on the part of the entire Jewish people took place during the time of Purim, at the time of Haman's decree. In contrast, during Hanukkah, there was also a requirement of self-sacrifice, but that requirement wasn't displayed by the entire Jewish people. It was displayed primarily by Matisyahu and his sons, and those who joined with Matisyahu and his sons to fight against the Greeks. But as we know, there were plenty of Jewish people who remained Hellenists at that time. Not all of the Jewish people joined in that battle. And even after the Hashmonaim were victorious in a miraculous manner, so miraculous that we have a special holiday which celebrates the miracles of the few against the many, and the righteous against the evil, as it says in the Al Hanisim prayer that we say on Hanukkah and on Purim. Nevertheless, Hellenization remained, and the entire period from the reconsecration of the Second Temple, which the Maccabim, the Hashmonaim did until the Second Temple was destroyed. There were tzaddukim, there were Hellenists, there were Jews that went against Torah and mitzvahs, and there were Kohanim Gedolim that the kahuna, the status of a Kohen Gadol became something that could be purchased. And people purchased it. People, for the honor, they purchased the honor to be a Kohen Gadol, even though they know that they wouldn't last, they wouldn't live throughout the year. Because a Kohen Gadol that goes into the Holy of Holies with impure thoughts and isn't actually where he needs to be, would die. And they would see it with their eyes of flesh. Kohanim and Gedolim, who were members of the Tzaddukim, would die, but nevertheless, that honor, still want it and still pay for it. And the Midrash says, based on the above, it's possible to explain the statement of the Midrash that's brought in the Maamar of the previous Rebbe, that the Rebbe is explaining. The Midrash says that Mordechai in his generation, Kemoshe Bedorah. Mordechai Bedorah, who shakal Bedorah, Kemoshe Bedorah. Mordechai was equivalent to Moshe.
You are at 371.
Correct.
Here.
I can't see from so far. Is that 371?
It's not the last one, the previous of the last one. In every generation, there are shepherds faith. It's on the plural.
Yes. Yes.
It's on the plural.
Correct. There are shepherds. That's right. That's true. That's true. If you take a look at the picture, it's 11. Okay. If you take a look at the pen, we'll stop here. We'll just continue next week. But if you take a look at the paroiches, the covering of the Aron Kodesh, you see the menorah has 7 branches, and all of the flames are facing the middle flame. In other words, there are tzaddikim, but there's one tzaddik who's the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation, that all the other tzaddikim and all the other Jewish people should be bottled to him. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you all next week.